So I'm glad you've touched on mentors and
Yeah,
the word cloning.
yeah,
And I mean, past interviews is something you've mentioned. But could you explain to us more about what you mean by cloning and
yes,
the people who have influenced you over the years?
yeah,
And just lastly, if you were 21, if you're in our age,
yeah,
who would you clone or
yeah,
how would you go
exactly.
about it?
So the word cloning is, I actually don't think it's the word that I prefer to use. It's comes from, I think it's in Monish's book, but Monish talks about cloning, and cloning is a scientific term for, I think it's you take a DNA and you make a copy of it, and so, but I think that, and I used the word cloning because I'd learned the idea from Monish, but it actually goes deep into what makes us human beings. So, and again, when I write stuff and I get edited by my friend William Green, he always takes all this potted science out and he says, "No, we're not putting that in there because this is." But now he's not editing me, so I get to talk about it. Um, you know, mirror neurons are this. So, what an amazing thing our brain is, because scientists, the way I understand it from my readings of things like Scientific American and New Scientist, there's a model in our head, or there's a whole part of our brain that's given over to modeling what is going on with somebody else. So right now, my brain is modeling your feelings. I kind of get a sense of how you feel about me, about being in the room. Why do our brains have that? Is an interesting question. I so I hope that you'll allow me. You could edit this out, I guess. So we share a common ancestor with the great apes. Goes back 5 or 6 million years. The Stone Age started 3 million years ago or so. We got fire. We mastered the ability to use fire about 1 million years ago. Bronze Age. So Stone Age is like we see that they were using stone tools. Bronze Age is, I think, no more than 30,000 years ago, or perhaps as little as 10,000 years ago, when we started being able to work with bronze. And Iron Age is like, I think, less than 3,000 years. And computers is like 3 decades. So you've got 6 million years worth of evolution, all the way down to more recently, where basically we're hunter-gatherers. And so I find this fascinating, and it's drawn from Yuval Harari's book *Sapiens* and from *Guns, Germs and Steel* by Jared Diamond, where he kind of does. They both do this kind of big history thing and says, why are we the way we are? And so all of that, I just did another detour, as you can see. Why? So mirror neurons. We clearly are able to model in our heads what somebody else is thinking and feeling, and I believe that, so part of what's going on is that the way we learn is that we model what is going on with somebody else. And so I would imagine we're going out hunting and gathering, and the younger person sees how the more experienced person reacts to a certain environment, and the mirror neurons in our head teach us how to do that. We're not going to be able to do that if we're out there in that environment alone. We're not going to know how to react to the stone falling, the deer that shows up, whatever it is. So that process that is mentorship. And mentorship is not that the person sits down and says, here's how you do it. It's that by feeling what they're feeling, I now learn what I need to feel in this situation. And so I think that when we have a mentor, or when we clone people, it goes to the very, very core of our humanity. We're actually activating some very powerful wiring that in a certain way in a modern world we got disconnected from. And I'm not going to be able to cite somebody on it, but somebody famous and well-known and highly respected educator said that what we're actually doing when we educate somebody is that we're not showing them how to do it. We're actually showing them the feelings around what to do, and we're giving them that inspiration. And once they have that inspiration, so that is all a very long way of with quite a bit of potted science in, as you can see or hear. That is a long way of saying that I think that when we clone people, when we model them, when we have mentors, we're engaging in some very, very ancient wiring. And I think that as a general rule, when we engage the ancient wiring, we're actually on the right track, because we just not, we're not going to overcome 6 million years of evolution with 30 years worth of computers. So we need to engage that wiring, and in many ways, modern technology has divorced us from that. So when we decide to take on a mentor, we're re-engaging that wiring, and that's the point of it, actually, I guess, if you like. And so I stumbled across it, but when I sat, as I wrote, in my office, and I said, what would Warren Buffett do in my shoes? I was actually engaging that same wiring. I was engaging mirror neurons, and to some degree I can say I'm lucky because I could have him as my mentor even though I had never met him. But I guess my point to here in this room is we don't have to have met the person, and they don't have to tell us what to do. We can just know enough about them to say, what would they do in my shoes? And we may not get it right, but so I think there's a second part to the question, which is who to model. Yeah. So we one place to look is so the first thing that I think is utterly critical if it's going to work is the person has to activate emotions inside you. So I don't think I can say it often enough for myself to remember this. Emotions are guideposts. They're not just this thing out there that we just sort of pay attention to when we have to deal with the women in our lives or something like that, or let's just say because we don't want to significant other, yeah, that kind of takes all sorts of things into account. Exactly. They are signposts to action. So I would say but this, by the way, goes, does this person activate my emotions? Because Warren Buffett for some reason activated my emotions, but for somebody else it would have been a different individual. So who knows exactly what it is that activates that, but we have to trust that sense. And then I guess what's really important is, what values does this person represent? Are they living a life that I would like to live? Because I think that I could imagine, actually, funnily enough, if we take the guy that I worked for at D.H. Blair, the head of the Jordan Belfort Wolf of Wall Street firm that I worked at, I had a certain amount of envy for him. He was a successful guy. He was reputed to be worth at the time $500 million, which seemed to me to be like an enormous amount of money. And he ran a business, and he was successful, and he had a big family. And so my emotions were activated there, and he was available to me. He was willing to have me in his office, but he was not the right guy to have as a mentor, because he played fast and loose with the law, if you like. And actually, look, he's really, really smart guy. He had other people break the law for him. So, when he got investigated by the NASD, or it was the sister firm, not the one that he was closely related to. So that, I think that was in a certain way my downfall there. So you want to get maybe if you're not sure, get some guidance from other people and people that you trust. Like, is this a guy? Should I? So I think today, somebody that I would want to clone is Reed Hastings. There is so much about Reed Hastings that I'm just so impressed with in 1,000 different ways. And I think that, his books here, actually, I'd want to understand how he's achieved what he's achieved. And now, Reed Hastings is, I think, a highly, highly ethical guy. But if I wasn't sure, so let's take somebody else. So he's a guy to clone. I think that Jeff Bezos is just like, it's like he's beyond anything. But obviously he's a guy to clone, or to try and understand how he is become who he is. And actually, as I saw the question this morning, I think that, I mean, I don't know how the hell you clone the guy, because he seems to be such a genius as Elon Musk. I mean, who would not want to try and clone that guy? But there's another book that is on my reading list that I've delved into a little bit. I think it's over there, Schwartzman's book. Mm-hmm. I think that when you get into more finance types, I think that, you know, there's the danger of cloning somebody who has actually used shortcuts and they've been successful at hiding their shortcuts. So I think that I read a book about Carl Icahn when I was younger, and I was really, really impressed with him. I don't think that I want to clone Carl Icahn. I think there are things, I mean, you just need to watch that YouTube video of his interaction with Bill Ackman. I don't know the facts of what happened there. It's something to do with, there's some a transaction that took place, and there was something insurance it was called. But I don't want to get into relationships like he seemed to have with Bill Ackman at the time. We can sort of leave it as at that. But you want to be more careful. And something else that one wants to be careful of is that when you haven't met the person, they will cultivate a persona that doesn't show the whole truth. I think the guy at D.H. Blair cultivated a persona that didn't show the whole truth. It was much easier to do that because you didn't have the internet. You didn't have 1,000 different articles about you. I mean, when I wanted to do my due diligence on the guy at D.H. Blair, I had to go to the Harvard Business School library, and I had to pull out microfilms of the New York Times to see what articles were written about him. And I saw a couple of articles. That was it. That was kind of like what I could do. It's not like going into the internet or going into some online database and typing in a search term and seeing what comes up. But but even today, people work hard to cultivate a persona that doesn't capture all of who they are and doesn't necessarily capture all of why they became successful. And so you want to be careful in choosing that person. But you start with, and I don't know if I can do it on the interview, but we can do it now. We can do it later. Who does generate that sense of envy? It's like, you know, who does it for me? Who's not in finance is Steven Spielberg. So you talked about movies. I have zero artistic ability, so I believe I appreciate art in all sorts of forms, but I have zero in terms of creativity. But I ask myself, if you could step into anybody's shoes and be living their life, wouldn't it be? I mean, I think that Steven Spielberg has had such an amazing life with so many amazing people, and he's created these worlds in these different movies, whether it's, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, or, movies about the Holocaust, or movies that have, Saving Private Ryan. I mean, so many, and that seems to me to be like an extraordinary life. But I think that they're high quality guy, just not something that I'm capable of. So I don't think I could learn that much from him. Yeah. And
the issue with mentors sometimes is, as you briefly mentioned, is there needs to be a lot of material on them for you to take in, to be able to learn from them, which is often hard. You don't have a huge choice sometimes in certain industries. And you also talked about being, finding a mentor who's been honest about their failures and shortcomings, and certainly a huge, what surprised me in the book is how honest you are throughout the entire book. You talk about blow-ups that you had at home during stressful times. You talk about your shortcomings, your personal shortcomings, your career shortcomings. You're very honest about this.
So can I just step in there for a second? I hope it doesn't break your train of thought. No. But so that was part of the motivation to write the book. So they say that pearls are created when there's something in there, a piece of sand that irritates the oyster. And I was looking for mentors, and it irritated me that people were not being honest. And eventually I'd be like, yeah, that's not the full story, is it? I know you're hiding certain things about yourself. Actually, the last time that happened, in my opinion, is the book about Jack Ma. And, I probably get the Chinese Secret Service onto me or something, but I'm sorry, Jack. That is not even half the story. and you don't even give a clue. And just the story of how Ant Financial got out of the hands of Yahoo, and I, sorry Jack, that is not honesty, but what inspired me was that, so I've met Monish Pabrai, and for some reason he talks to me about Mahatma Gandhi, and so then I come out of that and I buy Mahatma Gandhi's book, and it's sitting on a bookshelf somewhere. Then someday I read it, and so I pick up Mahatma Gandhi's book, and I feel like within the first 30 pages he starts talking about his dalliances with prostitutes. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the autobiography of Mahatma Gandhi, and he's talking about his dalliances with prostitutes. It's like, holy moly. And then he talks about eating meat, and it's like eating meat is like the hugest sin for his family. But that was an inspiration for me. So I said, if he can be that honest, and I have to say that reading the book about Nelson Mandela, My Long Road to Freedom, and I hope that members of his family won't be upset with my saying this, he did not achieve the same level of honesty with the reader as Mahatma Gandhi did. And so this comes through one way or another. You kind of figure it out. So I wanted to do that. And what happened to, it's a certain act of courage to do that. But I was inspired by somebody who wasn't alive. Let's just remember that. And when you say you're looking for mentors, it's true. You're not going to find somebody like Reed Hastings who kind of talks about how he built this extraordinary media business. But, Abraham Lincoln, I talked about Abraham. So we can delve into the past, and, Charlie Munger's famous statement, we can hang out with the eminent dead, if you like. But yeah, the book is honest, and there's a reason for it to be honest. I wanted to be honest, both because that was the purpose of writing the book, and also it was great psychotherapy for me. I know where I was when I wrote the chapter on D.H. Blair. I know exactly where I was, and where I was when I finally said to myself, yeah, I'm gonna put this in the book. It's like, come hell or high water, no matter what happens. And I just wanted, you had a question. Can I keep going?
Oh, good. Go ahead.
Monish Pabrai has he says it in such a harsh way, and it's kind of shocking, but I think it's still probably true, is that you can be a mass murderer, and the world will forgive you if you're honest about it and you asked honest forgiveness for what you've done. People, in a certain way, don't care how bad you've been. They care about whether you're honest about it, and whether you're confronting how bad you've been honestly, which, by the way, is the appeal of Donald Trump. He just says it straight. Yeah, that was locker room talk. Yeah, I've had a lot of fun with women in my life. That's who I am, and I've never wanted to cause any woman any harm. And people are like, I don't like him, but he's being honest about it. And the world is reacting so badly. I think the people who do virtue signaling don't realize how badly the world is reacting to it, because people don't say it. They say, I don't like it, I'll kick you out at the voting booth. And that's why the next week is going to be so freaking interesting. But sorry, I want to keep going on this, because it's just so important, and it's so amazing. I mean, because Jordan Peterson explains it better than it's been explained to me to date, is the world is a very, very complicated place, and there's absolutely no way that one human being can either understand it or predict it. But when you're honest, when you say it how it really is, you're setting yourself on the side of how things will unfold. Whereas if you try and modify the truth, if you try and hide something, if you try and present it in a different way to what it really is, you're setting yourself against reality. And so it's more likely that reality is going to win, because it's just infinitely more powerful than we are as human beings. So being honest and truthful, first of all, with ourselves, and second of all, with the world, is extremely, extremely important for a successful life. And so in a certain way, the book was an exercise in that, if you like. So sorry I interrupted you or stopped you from continuing.
I mean, and you do have moments in the book where you actually stop and you go, I'm not sure whether I should write this or not. You have several moments like that in the book. So, and I don't mean to toot your horn too much, but if there is, you've talked about, a lot of the world knows you for having cloned or having tried to, learn from Warren Buffett. Yeah. You've adapted that to your own personality, as we spoke about earlier. But if there's one thing that we would want to clone from you as students or aspiring investors, what would that be?
I feel like I want to throw the question back at you and say, yeah, what would that be?
But there's so many things, and there's so many things we're going to get into in this interview, which we want to discuss. One thing is definitely the compounding of goodwill. Yeah. That whole concept. But also, for example, you just mentioned the seeing reality as a greater force than any individual. For example, I've never thought of it that way.
So I it's not fair of me to throw the question back at you, although I don't mind doing unfair things and thinking that's okay. But so I think that when we clone, again, I can't tell you what to clone, because that would be kind of telling you what should engage your emotions, and I can't tell what's going to engage your emotions. In fact, you don't know what's going to engage your emotions, so that's something that each individual has to figure out for themselves. And we can definitely take cues from other people. But if I say what lessons do I think that I can impart to students, I think that, so towards the end of the book, I think I write something along the lines of get the right people in your life, because they'll teach you everything that you need to know. And once you've gotten those people in your life, so don't worry about modeling a spreadsheet industry something. Get the right person who will be able to bring you to wherever it is that you need to go. And so how do you do that? And actually, I think that so that getting around the right people is perhaps the most important thing. And actually, if I stop and think about it, and I don't think it's in the book, but so yeah, since the book, and I went on a 10-day Vipassana meditation retreat. I lasted 3 days.
What happened the other 7 days?
I can talk about. So I lasted 3 days. I aspire to do a 10-day Vipassana meditation retreat again sometime in the future, and we can dive into why I only lasted 3 days. But those 3 days were extraordinarily powerful, and I came out of that, I don't want to say changed person, but I explored mental areas that I don't think I would have been able to get to if I had not gone and done that. And I just to give a very short indication, we all have, now you can get all these meditation apps on the phone. After having done that retreat, any guided meditation with some idiotic voice telling me what to do, open my eyes, close my eyes, no. And by the way, any stupid music, no. The only thing that I want are the timed bells, or something that gives me a sense of passing of time every 5 minutes or every 10 minutes. But getting the right people in your life, but also the ability to sit alone and just accept what is going on and to think about it rather than to do would be, I think, some of the most profound lessons that I'd want to impart. But the getting the right people in your life and how you go about doing that, there are some really, really practical skills to go about doing that. So if the big idea is get the right people in your life, and one of the ways to do that at scale is to grow goodwill. But then there are some very, very practical skills. And I'll give you one, again, from my poor family. They're hearing Jordan Peterson's name every 5 minutes. But here's something incredible. So we all have friends who studied engineering. Do you know, and so engineers are more interested in things than in people. So some engineers have a hard time socializing, and they get a very high sense of anxiety when they go into a room where there are a lot of people. So the simple fix, or a possible fix, that Jordan Peterson gives to those people is, when you go into a social situation and you're feeling nervous, what do? You look at your shoes. That makes you more nervous. Your hands start sweating. You don't know what to do. You keep looking at your shoes. And what Jordan Peterson says is, just look into people's eyes the way that both of you are right now with me, because, so you didn't notice what you just did, but I said that and you blinked and you had a little bit and you just nodded. Yeah. Because the minute you're looking into somebody's eyes, there's a whole bunch of systems in the brain that engage in mirror neurons and God knows what, and then you can come out of yourself and you can become, so that's an amazing fix. And that is kind of a clickware type. You take a kind of a what may feel to the engineering type an uncomfortable step, an unnatural step. Lift your eyes up from your shoes and focus on somebody's eyes in the room, and you'll see that you'll start feeling safe and comfortable. I find those kinds of, so when I talk about writing thank you notes, that is effectively what I'm addressing. I'm addressing what are the kind of the basic fixes that we can do with our interactions with the world to start the process of growing goodwill, to start the process of getting the right people into our lives. And you're not going to be able to get the right person into your life if your only choice is a group of people at a cocktail party, if you can't talk to anyone. So your first step with the engineer is who's socially awkward is not, well, you've got to go and find somebody who's got the right moral qualities and the right, no, you just got to find somebody. So you need to teach that person how to look somebody in the eyes. And so growing goodwill is a big idea, but there are so many little pieces that can be a part of that, and kind of they're building blocks. And what's important as we have a conversation like this here is that we don't know where somebody is on those. I strongly believe that there are some basic building blocks for success that I still don't have. And I hate calling up people who might invest with me. Our mutual friend Chantal knows all about that. And I think that, there's a certain element of the engineer staring at his shoes that is going on with me. And so I can talk in grandiose terms about growing goodwill, but that is a building block that I still need to acquire in my life fully and own it and internalize it. And but interestingly enough, if I get the right team around me, and I have an amazing team around me right now, and if I'm honest with them about my failings, so like, I think I have a real problem here, you guys need to help me with it. Please, if you catch me staring at my toes or avoiding talking to people that I need to be talking to me, catch me and make me do it, is kind of the way I kind of learn and overcome that. And that's perhaps a part of getting the right people in your life. But so what is the lesson? Get the right people in your life for sure, but don't walk around saying that. Figure out what the building blocks are for you, and everybody's different. One person will be like, oh yeah, I walk into a cocktail party and like I'm talking to everyone. Now it's my issue is selecting the right person. Another person is just getting to talk to people. The thank you notes is just a little building block. And interesting enough, just for your interest, so there's a part of me that's shy that needs to conquer that. The thank you notes was a stepping stone, or is a stepping stone, because I might not be able to call the person up and say, but I'm okay to write a thank you note.